Welcome to True Health Tuesday, and the truth will set you free. We're gonna the power of gratitude and brain function. I'm gonna read something just really quick because I think it says it really well. For healing and disease reversal, it's vital to develop a healing, regenerative mindset. We know that thoughts can change gene expression. By controlling the expression of your genes, you can reverse disease and express health. To control gene expression, you have to change your perception. You have to change the power of your perception. You have the power to change your perception instantly by simple exercises. Using meditation, affirmations, neurolinguistic programming, you can manifest healing. In fact, the only way healing can occur is first you have to change your belief system to one of your potential for disease reversal and true health expression. Your thoughts control your physiology. To manifest health, tissue regeneration, disease reversal, or to manifest true health expression, the first step is to change your belief system about your potential. We have all heard of spontaneous remissions of incurable diseases. Now you will learn the technique to program your subconscious to reverse disease, to restore health, and to be able to express life you were meant to live. Okay, I wrote that. Okay, also too. Okay, now, check this out, December 3rd. Okay, Mr. Kennedy. Friends call him Bobby. He's Mr. Kennedy. I'm this guy. 7 to 9, give Dr. Tony a call. RSVP 818-575-7558. Okay, and I'll see you there. I mean, this is exciting. There's, let's just say the world's changing. Now, the second part, the censored part, is going to be on the Dr. B VIP. If you're watching it there, great. Thank you for supporting us. If you haven't clicked already, click on the notification bell because they are censoring us. And those of you that are supporting the Dr. B VIP, thank God. That man is not free. I'm talking about our editor and everything else. Okay, and Extreme Health Academy. You used to get Bergman 14 as your code. 2 weeks on there for no charge. You got to see this group. It's amazing. I'm there all the time, at least once a month, and answering questions for a 2.5-hour webinar. Now, if you're curious, countries do have a life cycle. Now, when you've hit 40% of the country being on the government dole, okay, and so we're talking pension, Social Security, Medicare, everything else, that's the decline of civilization, or of that particular type of social entity. And we've seen this for forever because in every democracy, it's like ancient Greeks, when they did the infrastructure, they built the great buildings, okay, they would start, and they did the wars, they would pay the soldiers in not pure silver. And they said, no, it's the picture on the money that matters. It's not the silver content. Well, we also have a fiat currency as well. So everything has these cycles. Plus, when food becomes 50% of the income of the people, again, riots. So we are going to have riots and challenges coming up if the last 2.5 years isn't proof enough. But look at this, from dependence back into bondage. And right now, you can see over the last 2 years, complacency to apathy, apathy to dependence, from dependence into bondage. And this is where we're going with all the restrictions. However, then we go back, bondage to spiritual faith. So your faith in yourself, your faith in God, your faith in seeing the light of life, okay, in each person, because we're all from the same source, energy, then we have this awakening. So we're needing to till the soil, suffer through the bondage. But if you have your spiritual armor on, you never are in bondage. When you look at, say, the Gulag Dialogue or Gulag Diaries, and then you look at Man's Search for Meaning, okay, by Viktor Frankl, people have taken away everything from these Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and you look at they've lost everything, but they had their spiritual faith. And so they're never alone. Epictetus, okay, same thing. You're looking at holding that spiritual faith. So spiritual faith is what's going to bring us out. You just got to have the awareness. Because fear has been used by society, government. If you've seen the local speech of our fearless leader in Philadelphia, I know I should have something behind me that would identify how insane that speech was. But it's to control people. That's all it is. Okay, control society and maintain positions of power. And so what do we got? We've got high disease rates, okay, highest in the world, economic instability, world in chaos. And what does this do? What does this do to your brain and body? Well, you've got this automatic nervous system. If you think that you're out of control, that you can't control the elections because they might not have good integrity, although I can't say that because then they get us censored. You might be concerned about the forced medical procedures without informed consent, but I can't talk about that either. You might be concerned about the loss of the dollar and the destruction of, just printing more money and then finding out it's worth less, but we can't talk about that either. All of these things we can't talk about could stress you out. Isn't that weird? All the things we can't talk about could stress you out. It's going to put you in a fight or flight state. Okay, in that fight or flight state, and it literally elevates your heart rate, shuts blood supply into the gut, weakens your immune system, puts you in anxiety. Now, your brain, you've got more connections in your brain than there's stars in the sky. And your brain functions at a different level. Okay, it doesn't have like regular blood going to it. There's a barrier between the blood and the brain. I mean, I love this. Even on a slow day, you have 10,000 times more connections in your brain than there's stars in the Milky Way. And the neuroplasticity, your brain has a way to regenerate neurons. So under pain, the brain shrinks. Poor stimulus, the brain shrinks. Anxiety, hippocampus and certain structures in the brain literally change their structure. Now, the brain is super hungry. It weighs about 2.5 to 3 pounds, burns 30% of the body's calories, 90% of the body's oxygen. So we've had talks about breathing away disease, about oxygenate your system. But what if you're doing certain medical procedures that limit oxygen? What if you're walking around and not exercising, you're not oxygenating? The movement is vital. We do movement exercises for everything to regenerate neuronal tissue. And now what kind of things can negatively affect the brain? Thoughts. And that's why I read that at the start. Your thoughts can have an imprint on your brain. So if you're consistently saying, everything's shit, it's really bad, we're all going to die, there's no hope, that's your reality. If you say, look, man, the world changes all the time. I'm a child of God. And I read the end of the Torah, the Quran, and the Bible, and we win. Good guys win. It's cool. If you don't believe that stuff, pick one up. or, get into quantum physics. Your body is more energy than matter. And what you think about brings about. If you look at Einstein, he said there's no matter, it's only energy. And since your thoughts are energy, you can create that matter. First one we can't talk about, medications. Now, what kind of medications help your body regenerate tissue? None. They'll slow or stop metabolic processes. They're generally in response to stress. Environmental toxins, food, nutritional deficiencies, stress. Oh, shoot, I didn't finish that. That's supposed to say propaganda. Okay. Now, mast cells are in virtually every tissue you got, inside the lungs, intestinal tract, everywhere. And they respond to tissue damage. And that's the key. So when we say mast cells in stress, pain, blood-brain barrier, neuroinflammation, Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is not only epidemic, it's going to affect 100% of people older. Why? Because a good hunk of the percentage are doing certain medical procedures that damage the brain. They're eating certain diets that damage the brain. They're sitting around sedentary lifestyle, which damages the brain because you're not getting stimulus. And you're watching thoughts that create stress and anxiety that damage the brain. Now, all of these things, if you're physically, chemically, or emotionally stressed, what has to happen to blood pressure? Yeah, so you take a drug to lower it down because the doctor knows what's right for you. Okay. Th- Holy moly, the brain burns 90% of the body's oxygen. So, and it's made 50% of cholesterol. So if you're taking a blood pressure and cholesterol drug, guess what? You're decreasing the nutrients to the brain. No wonder, you're talking a 1-to-1 in neurodamage. Blood-brain barrier, entry of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Pro-inflammatory means cells that produce inflammation. Cytokines mean cell type. Stress and immune system bidirectionally enhance stress response to the CNS. So you look at all of these articles, and they're all saying inflammation, but inflammation has to come from tissue damage. Now, if you've had 3 shots of espresso, your body feels it. If you've had 3 shots of alcohol, your body feels it. Okay. The brain can't function like that. So there's an actual barrier between the blood and the brain. And this is why the brain and spinal cord get cerebral spinal fluid. So it's a bit of a barrier. Now, this barrier isn't formed from 7 to, some say, young adults, teens. Nobody, it's all different in everyone. I think it's continually being rebuilt over the person's life. So if you're having any kind of medical procedure before your blood-brain barrier is formed, that's probably not good for the brain. I know. Duh. Okay, so let's just look at some of the neurotoxins. Now, aluminum, if you eat it, you can generally poop it out. If you inject it, you're going to get 100% of it. Now, the average kid, if they're fully injected, they get around 6,150 micrograms of aluminum. And this is the standard schedule. Now, what can this do? Well, it can actually alter DNA function or DNA production, damages cell membranes, increases increases cardiovascular disease, excitotoxins in the brain. And we are seeing this. I mean, anybody that's worked in schools, and if they've been teaching more than 20 years, I'll say, wow, you've seen the change. And you know what 100% of the teachers say? Yeah. They all look down to the ground and say, yeah, I've seen the change. You don't even have to say what the change is. We go from kids that are kids, they run around, play, do stuff, but they're not listening. They're like wild animals. Their impulse control is completely gone. It's a whole different world. Other things that can disrupt brain function, benzodiazepines, okay, that's the mama's little helper, blood pressure drugs, steroids, contraceptives, opioids, amphetamines, antidepressants. So, and then antibiotics, and this is in our food. It's odd to think that our food is not good for you, particularly antibiotics if you're eating commercially produced animals, that it has, or if you're eating commercially produced bread, it can actually damage your gut flora, which allows yeast to grow. Now, if you look at this, yeast is not bad. Okay, yeast overgrowth is. Bacteria isn't bad. Bacteria overgrowth is. Now, when you look at your body, and again, I want you to look at your body and brain as like it's designed to be here. Okay, you got 70 trillion cells. You have 10 times those cells the number of bacteria. You have 10 times the bacteria the number of viruses inside of you. Now, you figure these bacteria, if you didn't have, you would die. You need this. You have a harmonious, you have an ecosystem that has to have those bacteria. You need 10 times of the bacteria viruses. And these viruses, they're inert, they don't self-replicate, they got to use your host DNA. Some of them destroy negative pathogens. I mean, they work for you. They eat up dead tissue. They have a job, okay? Without those viruses, you die. And then countless parasites and funguses and yeast. Without these things, you die. So it's insane to have your media, okay, tell you, be afraid of each other, be afraid of the world. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. Now, drugs that are commonly used for asthma, allergic reactions, inflammation, autoimmune disorders, steroids, and then there's cortisone, hydrocortisone, prednisone, actually act on the hippocampus, which is huge for brain function, amygdala, which is your stress response, and frontal lobe, which is anxiety, stress, depression, impulse control, and schizophrenia. And it also increases suicidal behavior and neuropsychiatric disorders. So when you're looking at allergic reactions, that's inflammation. Inflammation has to do with tissue damage. So there's a way to solve allergies. There's a way to solve this tissue damage. Estrogens attenuate cortisone, exacerbates excitotoxicity, oxidative injury. We conclude that estrogens, progesterones, and cortisone can directly affect neuronal vulnerability to excitotoxic, that means it's going to die, metabolic and oxidative insults, suggesting that these steroids in several different neurodegenerative disorders. Several different. So the chemicals you take to reduce your asthma response, and when we talk about asthma, we talk about how it's not a disease of the lungs, it's the smooth muscle control of the lungs, and you can correct asthma 100% by getting the nervous system, changing the diet, and get the blood working. So it's huge that this many chemicals, because you're from 2022, your economy is destroyed, your healthcare system is destroyed, your people their brains aren't functioning well. Language is dying. Okay, it's the language deficits of the children because they've been masked and socially isolated for a couple of years. This is the state of your world. Okay, so when I talk about how you're in a pharmaceutical-based healthcare system, that means that if you have any kind of a symptom, ask your doctors this is right for you. Now, you're not going to just get it from a medical doctor. You're going to get it from every radio show, every television show, every neighbor. They're also working for that. I mean, when you're going out to lunch and your neighbors and friends are popping these, cortisone steroids because they have that itch, and you say, holy, that can damage your brain. And they'll go, well, what else do I do for my rash? My doctor is the best. Okay. Anybody here have the third best endocrinologist? I know she's hot, but she's not that smart. Anybody have the third best oncologist? No, they're always the best. I mean, it's insane the way that this stuff is advertised. Now, let's work on your brain, not the advertisement, not the propaganda that you've been exposed to. I mean, when patients say, well, my doctor says this, because I'll say, what do you think's wrong with the shoulder? Well, my doctor says this. So you don't even have authority to tell me what's wrong with you. Okay. And I'll ask them, I'll say, do you know what my medical doctor says? And they'll say, no, what? Say, why would I have a medical doctor? Their system is so skewed. If I have a bone sticking out, drive me to the emergency. That's the only thing they're good for. But I'm going to go to these guys for help? For what? What kind of chemical can help my body regenerate healthy neuronal tissue? No, it has to do with movement and thought and the way that we've been designed to live here. We're not designed to live with certain chemicals that your blood pressure is too high, yours is too low, your cholesterol is not good, your blood sugar is not good. Who are these guys? I know, pharmaceutical Pez dispensers. But here's something that's interesting. Mental practice in chronic stroke. So if you had a stroke, you visualize your body doing an exercise, and there's ways to do this with mirrors. You visualize your body doing this, and they found fantastic changes in rehabilitation. Strength increases from the motor program comparison of training with maximal voluntary and imagined muscle contractions. So you visualize you going through that action, even if you can't do it. And they found great results in visualizations in gymnastics. We're looking at neurofeedback on selective attention and responses in children with attention deficit disorder. I mean, so you think about this. You think about your body doing this, and your stats and your effectiveness at doing that action increase just by thinking about it. because you're running it through your mind. Why would that work? Well, because your brain fires in a certain pattern. So if you're in a consistent firing pattern, like let's say, I don't want to wish this on anyone, but let's say you're from 2022. Okay. You've gone through 2.5 years of propaganda. You've gone through multiple fears. You have no idea what the economy is going to do. And this is universal. Okay, wars here, wars there. There's always wars, but what's going on? Oh, the dark winter's coming up. Yeah, last year was a dark winter. Okay, so you're in this completely stressed environment because you're feeding that by turning on the propaganda. You can change that. Okay. So if you change that through meditation, through your own thoughts, you can control your thoughts. I just showed you how athletes can improve performance by thinking about their work. Stroke victims can change their outcome by thinking about their brain and their body and what they're doing. You cannot control the event. Okay? Yeah, try voting next year. You can control your response. Okay? And this is what Epictetus did, okay? Where we're talking about Stoicism 1,000 years ago, actually 2,000 years. Okay? You can control your response, and that radically controls the outcome. So no matter what anybody does to you, what any event that happens around you, and I'm telling you, it's been horrific. Single moms with 3 kids that if they didn't get this forced medical procedure without consent, they would lose their job without unemployment insurance. They would fire you. I mean, this is freedom of speech gone. It's violation of your personal integrity and your bodily autonomy gone for something that we now know in retrospect doesn't actually work. Well, to protect you, so you can control it. But when I'm talking about controlling your thoughts and manifesting a different body, okay, a different outcome, endogenous means it comes from within. Pharmacotherapy means it's a drug. You can watch a TV movie and produce endorphins. You can produce a pain reliever 40 times more powerful than heroin. You can watch something, what are those ones with somebody running through the field and you get Ambien, or is that the butterfly? Okay, whatever it is, I want the butterfly running through the field of gold. Okay, but just that thought pattern can change the emotions and chemicals your brain secretes, and you're in charge of those. How far can it go? This poison ivy study we brought up last week. It's a leaf that this group was allergic to. Sure enough, they put them in a room. They rubbed the allergic leaf on one, a control leaf on the other, and 100% developed the rash on the leaf side and no rash on the other. They switched the leaves before the test. So these people had to express a rash in an area that they didn't have a stimulus and suppress a rash where they did. This is incredible. Cancer. 100% of these rats are going to die between 14 and 17 days. And all this guy, for an hour a day for a month, held the rats. Didn't talk to them, didn't love them, didn't pet them, didn't do anything, didn't feed them different. 100% lived. They gave it to his assistant, 100% lived. They gave it to students, 100% lived. And you're not saying, I love you, rat, okay? We may conclude, apparently we're able to cure mammary adenocarcinoma in experimental rice on demand, or mice on demand. I mean, this is crazy that it can happen this quickly. Now, what's the history? When we talk about gratitude, when we talk about forgiveness, particularly with the times that we've experienced and the times that are coming up, Judaism, I will give my whole heart to the Lord. Islam, and remember, your Lord caused to be declared. If ye are grateful, I will add more unto ye. Christianity, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Jesus Christ concerning you. I mean, it's if you know what it feels like in your heart to have been wrong, okay, to have been lied to. Wait, I'm sorry. Imagine you're from 2022. Okay, So you could be anxiety and stress. You can't change the events of the last couple of years, but you can express gratitude for it because it may have brought your family closer. It may have separated the family more. Okay, it made me more independent, maybe more dependent. I mean, there's a lot of changes. Um, I love this. Gratitude opens the door to the power, the wisdom, the creativity of the universe. You open the door through gratitude. And why is this? Okay, so when we look at the brain is the collection of cells. When you look at the mind, that's a totally different entity, totally, because the mind is in your being. Okay, and this is where thoughts and actions come from. The brain is a little neuronal factory, but you can actually hold memory in a lot of different organs. And that might be a little out there for some people, but you can look up to people that have gotten organ transplants and they developed some type of skills that were part of that, the previous owner of that organ. So your conscious mind, this is what you're thinking about all the time. This is why you're thinking, holy shit, I've never heard that. An organ donor can actually develop skills from something that organ donor used to have. Yeah, it's a trip. Okay. Now the unconscious mind, this is what we're working with when we're talking about meditation. We're talking about controlling our thoughts. Okay. It gets the job done. 88% of the mind. Goal getter. It's programmable. Programmable is hugely important because this is what the propagandists are doing now. They're trying to program through repetition your subconscious so that you will follow every action that this government and pharmaceutical industry wants you to take. Um, if you don't want to think about that, okay, go ahead. Don't restrict my brain because we can actually change our brain in an instant. Okay, so right now, if you're thinking about death, destruction, the physical impairments that you got, um, why did this happen? When is it ever going to end? What's the problem? Okay, you're in it. I mean, those thoughts fall like dominoes and they can suck you into the pit of hell. Okay, really, really quickly. But remember, the subconscious is programmable. So we can actually do it through repetition and reprogram it. That's why I like neurolinguistic programming. That's on the other half of this sheet. It works really, really well. Okay. And body posture, volume, intonation, and breathing, repetition. I am healthy. I am dynamic. I am vibrant. And if you've ever read Bible, Torah, the Quran, you got that story in the front. Moses is up there, bush is on fire, gives him some great information. What's your name? How do I call you, Bush? I am that I am. So it's also called the Moses Code. I am enthusiastic, fulfilled, compassionate. And you can do this over and over and over. We've done a number of videos on neurolinguistic programming. Visualization. This is, again, it's amazing because when you're visualizing, and let's say that I found this around 15 years ago, in a dentist chair. How many people love going to the dentist? Not one hand is up. Okay. I'm with you. When I'm adjusting, because I got dentists that work with me down at our Mexico clinic, I'm adjusting a dentist on the table. I said, buddy, the whole world's afraid of either you or me. We're kind of badasses. I want to take him out for a sandwich someday. So when you're in there being tortured, I mean treatment, okay, and you smell the burning, enamel and smoke and everything coming up. That's not fun. So visualize something else. Okay, but I mean in such a degree that you could taste it, you can smell it. You can smell the salt air. You're not smelling that burning. You can hear the rustle of the waves. You can feel the rock of the boat. You can smell that like saltiness, that muskiness, because it's low tide too. I'm talking live it right there in the moment. And you can have this. You can have this in anything. Diaphragmatic breathing helps. But you can literally change your ecosystem by changing your thoughts no matter where you are. And I literally was in that chair for hours, but in my mind, I was on a boat off of an island. dove in, swam to the shore. It was amazing. I thought, oh shit, you're done already? You know, forgiveness. How many people have felt like they've been wronged by their parents or by a spouse or by a friend or by, I mean, anything. The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. I love Bruce Lee. Mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them. Anyone in here ever make a mistake that you required forgiveness for? Okay, only 2 people. The practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the world of healing. Because just think about it. I mean, what does that do to your soul? Like when you're, there's an old story. 2 venerable monks, one of them a master, one an acolyte, walking along this mountain road. A soldier comes roaring down the road on a horse on the wrong side of the road, rears up. I mean, the soldier was totally in the wrong, and yells and hurls insults at these masters, okay, or the one main master, and rides off. And it was so unfair that the acolyte was saying, after about 4 or 5 miles, he said, "Master, how come you didn't yell at that soldier? He was totally in the wrong." And the master looked at him and says, "My gosh, you must be tired. That was like 5 miles ago. You've carried that incident this whole way? How long do you want to carry that anger that person in your perception wronged? Do you think they thought, I'm going to do this to you? I know it's evil. No. I mean, maybe Klaus Schwab, but not somebody that loves you like a spouse or a parent or something. If this world could only grasp the power of forgiveness, being able to forgive someone breaks the cycle of bitterness and vengeance. How does that affect the brain? The frontal lobe is anxiety, stress, depression, impulse control. That frontal lobe is controlled by this little brain, the cerebellum. That tree-like structure in there is called the Arbor Vitae, the tree of life. I mean, there's so many signals that they're not telling you in 2022 that you're divine in origin, that your brain is divine in origin, that they still don't know how it works. But there's tons of idiots out there that are going to prescribe chemicals that alter the function of this, okay, without knowing the long-term cause. Let's program it. All the influence, every time you move something, it goes to that cerebellum. That cerebellum controls the frontal lobe. Does this mean that movement alone can alter brain function? Yes. That's why I'm nodding my head, trying to get you to do that too. Okay, so what does this do? Attention, planning, emotional regulation, reward seeking. What kind of things can it help? Schizophrenia, Tourette's, autism, Parkinson's, addiction, OCD. This is why one of the reasons exercise is so beneficial. So when we're talking about brain regeneration, exercise. I've got patients that are quadriplegics. They can't move their bodies. So what do? I give them breathing exercises. If they can't do that because they got a trach tube, they can start doing eye exercises, okay, which will stimulate the brain. They can do stimulus. I've and some of my the ones that can't move their legs, somebody else can move them for you, and you're still going to get certain stimulus. This is what we do with kids with seizures. It's amazing. Moderate exercise can reverse normal brain shrinkage by 2%, reversing age-related hippocampal degeneration by 1 to 2 years. Moderate exercise. Does this mean just taking a half hour a day and walking rapidly? Absolutely. I mean, lifting stuff is good too. You've got resistance and aerobic, fantastic. We demonstrate that loss of hippocampal volume in late adulthood is not inevitable and can be reversed with moderate exercise. That little seahorse thing is the hippocampus. Walking barefoot. It turns out the foot is actually a really good tool. It's designed correctly. So if you're walking barefoot in the grass or hard sand, some kind of wet surface, because the earth has an electronegative charge. I know it sounds weird to think that we're actually designed to live here, that the foot's a good design, and we have bacteria and viruses and funguses and yeast and parasites all over our whole body, without which we would die. So now you're an ecosystem walking on our planet, and it's good for brain function. It just seems crazy. We'll do cross-crawl exercises on people that have had huge problems. And I'm talking multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's. And you'll see after just a short time, people with brain fog, they can't swing their legs even. So swinging their legs, tapping something with a weight on, which opens up the knee joint. This gets massive, massive neuronal stimulus. Just swinging the legs. It's so cool that it actually works. When we talk about what you need to do to live and thrive on this planet. Now remember, if you're from 2022, you might not have a lot of hope, but you are made in the image and likeness of God. If you don't believe that, you're full of cells or organs that are made of cells. The cells are made of molecules. Molecules are made of atoms. Guess what? Atoms are eternal. They're eternal. Yeah, so parts of you have been here for all time. That's pretty cool, okay? You got to look at quantum physics. That'll blow your mind. So you need proper nerve supply, regular exercise, nutrition. This is what's going to become you. So praying over this and the energy of this is hugely important. Sufficient rest. This means you're going to regenerate your body every night. And prayer and meditation to take charge of your subconscious and fill it with good stuff. Does that make sense? It's the only thing that does. I mean, if you're dehydrated, your blood pressure goes up, I'm not going to give you a chemical that slows oxygen down to the brain. That's foolishness. Okay, it's foolishness. Okay, we get the body healthy. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to go into a couple of things that are dangerous, and that certain powers that be would take a dim view of this. Because if you're curious, the censorship that's going on now, a lot of people are getting wiped out. Okay, and I mean physically. Okay, but also channels and things. So we're going to go into a new thing that Joe's going to be eliminating.